because I found that I have said and thought things that could contribute to anti-Asian sentiment, and that was never, never, never my intention. So I apologize to the Asian community right off the bat.
And it's things that people either don't think about or they just didn't know, because I know there was a lot that I had no idea about.
Hey, May from unBasic Black.
Hello friends, Angel with unBasic Black here, and today we are talking about Asian hate. But I want to make sure that everyone who watches this understands that we in no way ever mean to insult, belittle, demean anyone. We're learning. So if we say something that is offensive, call us out on it, so that we can correct it and learn from it. That being said,
Today I'm going to talk about something that's really, really sensitive. It's been in the news a lot recently, and it's a resurgence of something that's been going on for a long time, and it's dealing with Asian hate. So I watched the video. I got notes. I watched the video called "We Need to Stop Asian Hate" by the Try Guys on their YouTube channel, and it brought up a whole bunch of points, and I've got a whole bunch of notes, and well, not that part, but in the brown. I had started recording earlier, and I felt like I was rambling, and I'm just not getting to the point and being concise. I do want to preface that the things that was brought up in the video kind of like convicted me because like church conviction, not like I'm going to jail conviction. Because I found that I have said and thought things that could contribute to anti-Asian sentiment, and that was never, never, never my intention. So I apologize to the Asian community right off the bat. Something that was brought up is, what is Asian?
as the term Asian. Now, I know that there is a lot of confusion for people, in particular in America, as to all that Asian incorporates. A lot of times when we say Asian people, automatically people think, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, so Southeast Asian, as opposed to the greater Asia continent that includes India, etc. And I think part of that goes back to what was once called the Orient, and the term Orientals was used. I know for me, it was about maybe a year after I graduated from high school. So in the 90s. So when I graduated from high school, and a friend of mine who is Asian corrected me on that, because I was saying Oriental, because that's the term that had been used, growing up as a military brat. We spent a lot of time overseas, and Oriental was a common term. That is what it was considered. And if you talk to a lot of older people, they still use that term Oriental, and that's Asians themselves also use that term Oriental. And I think that's where a lot of this, for like newer generations, that's where this began. So she corrected me on that and said, "Oh, we don't say Oriental anymore, we say Asian." But I think the transition still in our minds applied to people from the Orient, not the greater Asia continent. So that's why you have a lot of people who still make that mistake of saying Asian, but they're only including Chinese, Japanese, Korean, etc. So and education for us, more so than an education, but a remembrance that Asia includes a lot of other countries.
So, my growing up, my Asian for me was, and it's gonna sound really bad, and I apologize in advance, was Oriental. So, people from East Asia is what I've learned that I really should say, so as not to offend. So, people from East Asia are Asians in my head, and now Asian is a catch-all for well, Asia. People from Asia, from the continent of Asia. So there's a whole bunch of people in that on that continent. So that is that wasn't what Asian was for me growing up, but I know that it encompasses a whole bunch now. When I talk about Asians, I feel a need sometimes to be specific because it's so many, and I am really talking about one group of people. We need to talk about um, um, America's view of the Asian community as well as other communities' view of the Asian community. So, one of the things that I found really good and interesting, and um, it felt like it was treated as a surprise, but it shouldn't have been, was that black people and Asians have been working together through various civil rights ventures. I don't think that's the right word, but through um, at various times coming together to support one another, and then something will happen where we don't support one another because someone did something stupid, or something called the model minority was brought up in the video, and I I didn't know that there was a term for what I had seen growing up, and as I got older and out into colleges, and because I went to a lot colleges and then the education system, things like that, is the model minority is something that was put on the Asian community because it was, and I hate to say like white people, um, it was the way the government, which is primarily run by white people, it was a way for them to show that um, you can make it in America. You're just not trying, kind of thing. Look, these Japanese people, they came over here with nothing, and look at what they've done for themselves. These Chinese people over here, they came over here with nothing, and look what they did for themselves. What they did not tell you is that they picked the people who were coming. Now we're talking about in the 60s, in the 1960s. Prior to that, there were people coming from all over, and there was no um, specific requirement. I learned, and I did not know, that there was a ban on anybody coming from Asia to enter the country. They couldn't for decades. And then in the 60s, they reopened it with the stipulation that 45 was trying to get with, when he was in office, with the stipulation that you will be educated, you will be skilled, you're going to add to the American dream, and you have to assimilate, even though you'll never really be part of us, kind of thing. Oh, it's just trippy. So,
There was a lot of discussion about it's kind of like the a reverse of white privilege, to where you have Asian individuals who were basically handpicked to be kind of the standard of what a minority is supposed to look like. And I believe the term that was used was the model minority. Um, Over the years, I imagine that that has created a lot of backlash or negativity toward the Asian community. I wanted to talk about, but in particular, when we get back to looking at these incidences of hate, there's a lot to unpack there because you have communities that have been separated for so long. I know a lot of people, especially in the Try Guys video, he was talking about how the African American community and the Asian community at one point in time were united in our common fight against oppression, against, stereotypes, against racial prejudices and biases. But over the years, a shift occurred to where it became us versus them, or, there was a lot of animosity and hatred amongst the two communities. I have always thought in America that, Asian people they just do not like Black people. That's what I've always thought. And that's the sense that I always got going into stores and things like that. And I'm not talking about going into, any other kind of store. I'm talking about going into like a Black hair care store and being just treated horribly. And, and it doesn't help that a lot of these stores are located in predominantly Black neighborhoods. So then you have individuals who don't like you but make money off of you in your neighborhood. That creates a lot of animosity.
To definitely make sure that I said some names. And I apologize for one name that I didn't get her full name, but I wanted to bring up Vincent Chin. He was killed because he was mistaken for Japanese. He was Chinese, mistaken for Japanese. Um, Latasha, she was killed the year before the Rodney King beating. She was killed by a Korean store clerk for because she thought that she was stealing from her store, so she killed her. Those two names in particular. Then also wanted to bring up that there were riots and massacres in the 1800s in Denver, Seattle, and Wyoming. It reminded me a lot of Tulsa, and that the white people from those towns felt threatened by the Asians who had come over and started working. They felt threatened, so they tried to run them out of town, beat them, kill them, that kind of thing. So wanted to make sure that I brought up stuff like that, and I didn't even brought up these things, and these are things that I didn't even hear about, and definitely they weren't talked about in school. And it's history books are interesting. So I don't know that necessarily. That's a whole nother topic. Like what should we teach our children about American history? Definitely, we need to stop whitewashing our history with in the our history with children. They need to know these things so that it's not such a shock when they're in college and when they're out in the world. Like, wait, this really happened? And now there are moves to figure out how to tell children about the things that are going on in the world, so in a way that they understand, and in a way that it won't give them nightmares. My goodness.
So, the violence that has been spreading across the country, I think, has existed for a while. From what a lot of people have been saying, that's one thing that I definitely did not know, because I have been guilty of saying that, Asians prefer white people over Black people because they want to fit in, because they want to be accepted, and all of these things. I've also been guilty of the thought that um, that Asian people just don't like us. They just don't like Black people, and from people that I've spoken to, they say that's not true. However, like I said, from my own experiences, I have felt that way, and I've lived all over the world, including some Asian countries. And in those Asian countries, I was never treated the way I was treated by Asians in America. So I always felt that there was a big difference between the treatment of Black people in these different places. I spoke to a Chinese friend of mine about that before, and he basically said that it wasn't necessarily a negative reflection against Black people, but more so a reflection of the perfection or the standards that is expected of Asian people. And when you talk about status and standing and all of that, of course, that's where the white people are. You do have some Black people there, but, when you think of the standard, it is oftentimes thought of as a white person. So that's the goal that people are trying to achieve. So,
I was just thinking that the things that this country has done to Black and brown, and that's going to be an offensive word, and yellow, and red, anything not European, the things that's a better way to say it. The things that have been done to people of non-European descent is atrocious. Something else in particular is the anti-Black sentiment with Asians. So it ended up, they explained that it's not just anti-Black, it's anything not Asian or white. And then that goes back to that minority, um, model minority, because they worked really hard to be what white America wanted them to be. So it's like they kind of associated themselves with white people because they were chosen to come here, and then they did everything that white people wanted them to do. So that gave that the assumption was that we are your equals, kinda thing. So anybody who's not them or white is not on their level. Um, and then that goes to keeping us apart. So we're so busy looking at each other and fighting each other that we're not looking at the big picture. Is that we are being separated so that we can be picked off one by one, group by group, kind of thing. Light skin came up, and I did not. I knew that it was a thing with Indians, but I did not know Indians. Um, what do Native Americans like to be called now? And that probably sounded really bad too. But we got to talk about it because I don't know. I don't know. So please tell me. If I know your tribe, then I'll call you by your tribe. But if I don't know it, I'm sorry. And I'm doing the clumping thing, like Asian, indigenous. But that sounds bad too. So at any rate, light skin. So that's an issue. And I do remember I took a class in in a the class that I took had to be in a classroom that was designated for something else. So in this classroom, it was the classroom was actually to teach Korean, I think. I think it was to teach Korean, and they had magazines from Korea in there, and I would flip through the magazines while I'm waiting for class or after class because it was interesting to see these magazines in there and the things that interested Korean culture in magazines. And one of the things that I kept seeing was plastic surgery to change the shape of their eyes so that it's, oh, this is probably going to sound bad too, so that it's not so slanted, it's a little more rounder. Um, I don't remember seeing anything about skin lighteners, but I do remember about making the eyes less slanted so that um, they're more white. I don't know. And I thought that was really interesting. Like all the magazines had like pages of advertisements of plastic surgeons who will change the shape of their eyes. And mostly it was done with women. The women were the ones that were targeted in these ads. So I thought that was interesting. And now that I'm learning that they do skin lightening, and I've heard with countries in Africa that skin lightening creams are really popular there too. Um, and I didn't know that was I didn't realize that was a thing until this video brought it up, and I had seen it before, but it just didn't like register that it's a thing.
But what people really need to understand is that this struggle affects everybody. We're all in this together. And on both sides, whether you like it or not, you're going to have to understand one day that we're all quote unquote minorities. We're all people of color. So when it comes to racial bias and prejudices, they don't see a difference. They really don't see a difference. And I know that like in the Black community, we talk about colorism a lot, and that's where a lot of that came from. If you're lighter, then you supposedly have it better than somebody who's darker skinned, because the thought is that you're safer, that you're more civilized, that you're closer to white. And it's just so ridiculous that I think a lot of people are really starting to understand, in the Black community in particular, they're starting to understand that this colorism thing, because if you're light skinned Black and you're dark skinned Black, you're still Black. And you still face prejudice because of your skin color, because of your race. And I think the Asian community has also been affected by this. And one of the things that we were talking about, the model minority, that it became so dangerous for them, because not only did it set Asians up to where other people of color felt slighted, they felt, disadvantaged or disenfranchised in the face of this. But then you have other individuals who may have racial biases and feel like things that they deserve are being taken away from them because of these model minorities. But one of the things that was pointed out in that Try Guys video is that, the Asian people who came to the country during the 60s movement, these were like the elites of their countries. They were the doctors and lawyers and, the high income families who could afford to relocate here. So they were already at an advantage. But when you factor in the model minority, I think a lot of people don't know that. And then you have people on the outside looking in, and they feel like they're trying to take what I have. Look at them. I'm doing so bad and they're doing so well. It's not fair. But they were doing well in their country too. They just came to America to do even better. So
I didn't realize that this was a thing. I remember seeing it in movies and TV shows about Asians being targeted by the police and them getting harsher sentences than their white counterparts. But I didn't. It didn't click until, this video really brought out some good stuff. So um, I didn't realize that they were, and they kind of have a love hate relationship with the police too, because on the one hand, because they're the model minority, and they're kind of equated along the ranks of white people. The police should protect them, but there are times when the police don't, and they're targeted and beaten, killed, or whatever. Not, I don't mean whatever to dismiss it, but all those things that happen with when the police clash with certain communities, that kind of thing. I didn't realize that that the Asian community had a hard time with the police as well. Um, so that was something interesting brought up. Of course, also brought up was COVID, and how Asian people, particularly Chinese people, are are scapegoated for the virus. They're the scapegoat for that, and that people are beating and hurting and being abusive towards the Asian community, um, because they feel like that they're the ones who brought the virus to America. And then I learned that it's not the first time that's happened. That Asians have been blamed for other diseases coming to America as well, even though America forgets that they brought diseases here and killed nations of people in this on this land. Anyway, that selective amnesia, man, it just gets me. Like, you do know that you brought smallpox here. It wasn't a thing until you got here, right? And you gave blankets with diseases in them to people to kill them. So they're beating up, and here's the thing: they're beating up old people and women like cowards. You don't have enough testicular fortitude to beat up on men, to or people in your age group. You go and pick on somebody you know who can't fight back, or that you can overpower. Coward.
And back to what we were talking about, though, when you look at all of the violence and hatred and things that have been fueled by the rhetoric of our former president, if that's what you want to call it, him, if that's what you want to call him, our former president, he created a lot of systemic racist acceptance. That's the only way I can think of to describe it. A lot of biases and thoughts that people had under the surface were then, it was basically rewarded for coming to the surface, and people were able to say and do things that they never would have said or done before. When the pandemic happened, that just gave people the opportunity to voice some of the things that they had already been thinking, but voicing it against a community that has a reputation for being silent. Um, I think about predators and their desire for power and control. When they feel that they can have control or dominance over someone else, then that's where they go. And a lot of the violence has been perpetrated against people who are elderly, or women, and it's of course these are cowardly acts. There's no discussion in terms of, these are clearly cowards who do not have the balls to go say what it is that they really want to say without using violence. If you have a disagreement, or if you don't like things that are going on, That's the beauty of America. You have a right to say that, but you do not have a right to harm somebody else. There's just no discussion on that. No matter what color, race, or creed you are, there is never an excuse or an acceptance of violence.
A friend of mine brought up something because I was about to say, then you know that you have more in common than you thought. Um, she said that we spent so much time trying to find similarities that we ignored our differences, which makes people who they are. It's because we have differences that we can add something to the table. Yeah, I think it's great that we find things in common. Um, like there are cultures who love to barbecue. It's like, so do we. Kind of thing. And the parties are just as loud. Like, oh, we can do that together. And then our differences are the types of food that we bring to these barbecues, that we fix at these barbecues. And man, they smell so good. I'm so hungry. At any rate, but yeah, um, we differences are okay, definitely okay, and we need to know what makes us different from each other, as well as our similarities. That we're human beings, and we all want the same thing. We want a better life than our parents had, and we want our children to be safe and cared for. So
Somewhere. But you can't do anything about another person's actions or attitudes or feelings or thoughts, but you can do something about your own. So as we grow, as we evolve, that's something that we need to look at inside of ourselves. How can we be better people? How can we continue to fight for what we believe in and what we deserve? Um, I've quoted him quite a bit, but Dave, his song Black, he says, for the version that he did from the Brits, he said equality is a right. It doesn't demand anything else than that. It's a right, that, and period. And I think that once people really truly understand that, we can start working towards a better America. People are very critical of America now. And it hurts my heart when I hear even Americans saying, oh, America sucks. Oh, that's America for you. When this country was founded on such great principles, why do you think so many other countries in the world look to us to see what we're going to do? But we've gotten to a point where we don't respect ourselves. And if we don't respect ourselves, how can other people respect us as a nation? We have to do better. We have to. Because America is awesome. I don't care what anybody says. America is awesome. It's an awesome place. It's an awesome land with awesome people. But what gets highlighted oftentimes are the really, really bad people. You know, yeah, I'm going off on a tangent as well. So I'll stop there, but I really just hope that people stop the freaking violence. Leave people alone. If you don't like people for whatever reason, reflect. What is it about them that you don't like? Is it because you feel like they've taken something that belongs to you? Then how are you going to get it for yourself? You know what I mean? It's so stupid to blame somebody else for your own misfortunes. Granted, something like the college scandal where the people were cheating and lying and all this to get their kids into these best colleges. Now, be pissed off about that. But then what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Because if we don't change things, nothing's going to change. So we have to be the ones to do something about it. Um, so again, to my Asian brothers and sisters who might be watching this, thank you, first of all, for watching this. And we hear you. We do. We hear you and we see you and we're with you. We never left you. And that's the only way I can say it, that we've always been here with you. Sometimes actions of some people may not reflect that, but we've always been here. You know, we buy your products, we shop in your stores, we've always been here, and we always will be. We're in this together, whether we all like it or not. We're in this together, and we have to start acting like it so that we can get some real change and we can make things better for all of us. That being said, I am Angel with unBasic Black.
Someone brought up how can we protect ourselves and support other communities, and that's something it's kind of sad that we as people, period, have to think like that. How can we protect ourselves and support other communities, stand up for what is right for everybody? How do we do that? And that goes back to, we need to talk. We need to have these conversations, and they're hard conversations, because sometimes, as I've brought up in this video, we learn that we may have something in us that we didn't realize was there before. So, but talking about it will help us to get those things out, and then we can decide what to do with it. Whew, that was a lot. The video is an hour long, but it's a good hour, and it covers a lot. So I appreciate you staying with us this long to watch and to hear what we have to say. I would really appreciate it if you would comment below. Definitely appreciate it if you visit our website, unbasicblack.com. But definitely, please comment below. Tell us what's going on with you, and how Asian hate has affected you. Because I'll say this: so we may think that that's happening to them, but if one group is harassed and beaten and scapegoated and all those negative things that are happening to the Asian community, it's only a matter of time before it happens to another community. It's cyclical. The attention gets moved to someone else, kind of thing. So we're really all in this together, and we really we got to cut this mess out, man. And that's all I have to say about that.
Please like, subscribe, comment down below, because as we've said many times, these are discussions. We want to talk to you. We want to hear from you. We want to know what people are thinking and what's going on. We create these videos because we like to talk. We like to talk about, things that are happening in the world. And, we talk to each other a lot. So we want to talk to you as well. So like I said, thank you for watching. If you've been watching this long, we do appreciate it. We appreciate you, and things are going to get better. They have to. They're going to get better. So just hang in there and be strong. I'm Angel with unBasic Black. Have a great, glorious week.